Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. And today what we're doing is taking a look at the Zidoo Z9X media player. For those of you who are familiar with this particular device, you'll instantly recognize the fact that this isn't what the Z9X's interface actually looks like. I will get into that in a separate video, and I will also be doing a direct comparison with the Apple TV 4K, the 2022 version as well. Because that video is going to be more in depth, I will do that separately. And for those of you who want to actually figure out how to make your Z9X look like this, once again, that will be in a separate shorter video explaining that as well. But essentially, just to give those of you who aren't familiar with the channel a bit of a rundown. So the Z9X is basically just a media player. It's Android based. So as you can see, I can come in and you can essentially download additional apps. As you can see here, I've downloaded IPTV Smarters, as well as some other apps as well. One of those obviously being how I actually make it look like this. But essentially it's a Android-based media player, but it's a hardware device. So essentially what it's doing is it's not really bothered about streaming and all the rest of it. It doesn't have to cater for a really good user experience even. Essentially all it really has to do is play everything that you can throw at it and play it perfectly. And it plays it bitstream audio, raw audio, so basically you're getting full Dolby Atmos, which is the main reason I actually looked into this in the first place. So essentially on this first page, what you have is your media center, which is basically just a file manager. We'll just quickly look at them. So file manager is just this, so it just gives you a list of network drives, USB drives, that kind of thing. So not really that important. You then have your poster wall. This is essentially your movie player. Next to that, you have your music player, which we'll just take a quick look at. So this is just standard music player, and you can obviously sync this up and play all your music from here. And then you obviously have your app section as well as settings. Settings, this is pretty much the same as every other Z9X, apart from one thing. So I have already updated this. So as you can see, this is the software version I'm actually running, version v6.4.20. I did try doing a USB update directly from the actual website. However, that would constantly fail. I'll put some screenshots on screen showing you what was actually happening whenever I tried doing the official update. This particular version is, I believe it's a beta version, so it's not an official version, but this actually worked and it fixed a few of the problems that I actually had with it. Anyway, so that's the settings. There's plenty of other videos on YouTube going through all of these settings, and they're all pretty much exactly the same as what you would set. In the settings, there are a couple of things that I want to actually touch on, that I want to just go over in terms of my settings and things that I had to change. So firstly, I always have match frame rate as well as resolution selected on any of my devices, and I did select this. So essentially what this is supposed to do is whenever it changes resolution, whenever it's playing your content, essentially it's supposed to pause the content for that given time, so then you don't actually miss the content while it's switching. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to actually work. No matter what I try it with, whenever it actually switches, it still continues because you can hear the sound in the background. So unfortunately, that doesn't actually work, but the match frame rate and resolution does work, and I do have that enabled. All the rest of these, I believe, are just as normal. You do have an option to actually disable subtitles. I know somebody did comment in another video saying that there's no way of actually disabling subtitles. So initially when you play a movie, it always shows up, but you can actually disable them and have it just so then full subtitles show up, but general subtitles don't. I'll probably touch on that in a different video. In display, so here I just keep it in automatic. And then if we come down to color section, so this way you can set your highest sort of priority levels for all of your settings essentially. So if your device can't do certain things, then obviously you can put this higher or lower. I've just set everything to maximum and it still seems to play perfectly fine with all of my content. And I've checked it switching back and forth between the Apple TV 4K, the 2022 version, and it looks exactly the same, if not slightly better on the Zidoo. Coming down to HDR to SDR, that's once again still the same. Now this initially was what I had to change. So initially I had to actually come in here and change this to globally effective, and that would then work good for HDR. So it would set HDR correct, but then what it would have to do is map SDR to HDR in order to play it, otherwise the content would look really, really dark. Later on I actually discovered that that's actually down to, yeah, so the setting that you want to actually change is your HDMI color range. So you want to actually change this from automatic to 16 to 235, otherwise it always selects 0 to 255 by default, and the image will be appear to be way too dark. It'll crush everything. It looks really cinematic and everything, but you won't be able to watch it because it'll be too dark. Coming into audio settings, as you can see, just set everything to RAW, so it sends the raw signal straight to whatever you're streaming your media devices. So in my case, obviously the AVR, which is the Marantz SR8015. And the rest of these, obviously, you can go through and choose however you want. I do have mine hooked up via Ethernet cable. That's what I would recommend for all of you, just for things like downloading content, trailers, that kind of stuff. I do also have it set up via Bluetooth, and I am using my Best Joy remote rather than the original remote. There's nothing wrong with the original remote, but it is IR, whereas as anybody who's seen the channel knows, I prefer to actually use Bluetooth. There is one slight sort of niggle with this. There's a pretty decent app that you can actually use as well. However, if you connect the app, it actually forgets any Bluetooth remotes that you've got connected. So then you have to go back into the settings and actually reconnect this through this setting here, which is a little bit of an extra step. It doesn't automatically switch back. So that's the one thing to be aware of. If you do use the app a lot, then you're better off mapping any universal remotes to IR as well as Bluetooth, because you will need the IR in order to go back in here and get into this section and then click onto that. Other settings, obviously this is your HDMI settings, things like that, and you can set this as you wish, however you want it to turn on, turn off, or if you want it to just stay on in the background. Now on the original firmware that I actually had enabled, for some reason every time I switched it off, the device wouldn't actually switch off properly. It would just kind of time out in the background. It won't be responsive no matter what you did. Since the firmware update, it has performed a lot better. So yeah, that's something that you might want to be aware of if you do order one of these now, because obviously this is a device I've only ordered last week. Right, now coming on to the main thing, so the poster wall or the movie player. So this is essentially the main reason I actually purchased this particular player, and that was in order to get raw audio, bitstream audio through for all of your sort of movie collections and things like that. So if we come into Avengers Infinity War, as you can see, this is the sort of layout, and what I'll do is I'll just mute it, because what's going to happen in a second is you should see a trailer start to play in this top right hand corner. This is one of the things that I really disliked about Infuse on Apple TV, the fact that there's no way of integrating trailers, even by going into a separate setting or choosing something. So as you can see, the trailers actually just started in that top right hand corner. Right, so that's with the volume all the way down. Next to that, you do have BD, which is basically the option where you can load up the Blu-ray menu. That does work. It does take a little while, but eventually it does actually go in. The one sort of downside of this particular device is that it's not very fast. So everything that you do, be it clicks, animations, just moving through menus, it's all a little slow. So if we just click onto trailers, as you can see, it does this sort of loading thing where it does take a little while. This obviously, because the first one I'd already loaded, it loaded pretty fast, but the second one essentially is just streaming it. Now the quality of these trailers isn't perfect. It is playing from YouTube, I believe, and it doesn't manage to pull it through in any better type of quality. But as you can see, this is the sort of time scale for how long it actually takes in order to load first or second trailers. And obviously if you've loaded it previously, it'll load a lot faster, whereas if you go into a new movie, then it'll take a bit longer. You can star the actual movie from there. I'm not going to go too much into the actual layout and everything, because there are other videos that explain that really well. But essentially what this does is it gives you the very, very best quality of whatever it is that you're actually consuming. So if we come back into this, as you can see, just around this sort of section just here, along the bottom. It gives you all the information, so it's Ultra HD, it's a Blu-ray disc. It'll play back in HDR10 for me because my particular projector only supports HDR10. If you had this connected to a TV that supported Dolby Vision, then it would also show Dolby Vision there. It shows you that it's got Dolby Atmos. What you can then do is come down to where it says more. If you click on that, it will then give you all of the information regarding the actual content that you're actually watching, and it gives you all the various formats as well as what it's capable of actually outputting. Playback wise, I've been really impressed by how well this actually plays. One little thing that I do like is whenever you come into any type of movie and it's had a chance to actually download the artwork and everything for it, when you hit play, it does this really nice little logo. So it pulls that little logo just there, and it will do it for every single movie. So if we come out of that and we come into Top Gun, I'm not sure if I've actually loaded this previously, but if we hit play on that, yeah, there you go. So as you can see, it puts the little Top Gun Maverick logo there. Similar thing to this, it'll give you all the information. It gives you the Blu-ray options. You can go into trailers and you can also favorite it. Another neat little thing is you can actually click on that. If you hold select on it and you go to change poster, you can actually choose what you want your front card to be, and you can also choose the background for once you actually click into it as well. So that's a nice little touch. Automatically it will pull all your movies as well as TV series. Now it has kind of messed up the order for me because I've scanned basically everything all at once, but essentially if you had this set up and you were to rip a new movie, then it would come in order. I do like the fact that you can actually go in here and you can choose by score, and I've got it set to IMDb, I believe, so it'll actually give you all your movies in order of the actual rating. The date for me doesn't work the best at the moment, just simply because of the fact that I've scanned everything all at once, so the date is a little screwed up for me, but other than that, yeah, it works perfectly fine. Stability wise, I've not had it crash whilst playing a movie or anything, any of the normal sort of Android kind of experience that you would expect. Nothing's really crashed in terms of apps apart from IPTV SmartOS. I don't actually use IPTV SmartOS on here. I just downloaded it just to test how it actually performed. So yeah, my thoughts. So originally it was kind of, the idea was that I was going to just get this device, and because everybody always goes on about how the Apple TV is not the best device to actually use for media consumption, my idea was that, look, I'm going to eliminate all the other possibilities. Kaleidoscope's way out of the question. There's no way I'm paying that kind of price for just the player. And I don't think, being honest, my projector is really worth throwing that sort of content at it. And it's basically more than almost all my speakers put together. Half my system would come to the same price as what a Kaleidoscope would cost. Other than that, you have the PT players, you have the Zidoos, and a few other options out there. And out of all of them, I think the Zidoo was the best one for me, simply because I already have NAS storage, so I don't need any built-in storage. Hence why I didn't go for the Z10 Pro. The Z9X and the Z10, I believe, are almost identical in terms of the actual hardware inside them. The only difference is one has built-in functionality to add a hard drive, whereas this one doesn't. This is just, you have to plug stuff into it or use a network connection. And the network connection for me works perfectly fine, so no issues there. So originally, obviously, the idea was get it, test it out, and see whether it's good enough to keep or whether I send it back, seeing as it's from Amazon. And even after a couple of days, initially I wasn't actually that impressed. It was very slow. The previous UI was quite ugly looking, to be honest. I'll show you some images or something of that, but the original UI isn't the best. This one's a lot cleaner, and I do have the remote mapped with all the buttons, so I can literally just click one button on the remote here, and it will open up the actual movie player. Similarly, I can hit the music button just there, and it will open up the music player, and vice versa. So yeah, it works pretty well for that. The fact that I got the remote working straight away helped quite a bit, because it just meant that navigation and everything was a lot easier with a remote that I was already familiar with. The customization isn't the greatest, but it gives me some of the features that I was missing from the Apple TV. So The use case for this is just when I'm consuming media that's ripped. And generally what I tend to do is I like to consume the media in the best possible quality. So I'll try and get it in Blu-ray wherever possible. And similarly for TV shows, even if it's streaming on Netflix, Apple TV Plus, that kind of thing, I'll try and download the content just to get it so we don't have any of those issues where if your connection slows down slightly, it'll become slightly pixelated, whereas this way you don't get any of that and it just plays back in perfect quality. The two things it's given me that were lacking for the Apple TV were bitstream audio or raw audio, as well as, so you're getting proper Dolby Atmos, and for me, I can tell the difference. I didn't think I would. But I can definitely tell the difference. It almost looks as though the picture is also slightly better. That could just be the way that the device is actually processing the HDR, because this does have its own built-in Dolby Vision processing, the VS10 engine. So it could just be that. But yeah, for me, it looks better, it sounds better, it adds in the trailers, and it's a more dedicated sort of device solely for that. What it also does is, if we scroll down, if I can find it, what it also does is it can play back files that the Apple TV struggles to do so. So this particular demo disc, which is the Dolby UHD demo disc, it says 2018, but I think it might actually be 2017 when it actually came out. But the very first sort of demo that this plays, on the Apple TV, it never actually plays back properly. So the audio plays fine, but the picture is very stuttery. Whereas on this Zidoo player, the Z9X, it actually plays back perfect. So no matter what format I've got, everything just plays perfect on this particular device. Whereas on the Apple TV, everything but really high bitrate files will play back. So it'll play back MKVs, it'll play back M2TS files and most files, but I believe it doesn't do ISO files, and it can't do certain other files as well. Whereas this will literally just play everything that you can throw at it. So yeah, as a summary, I'm really happy with the actual device. I am still tweaking little things here and there, just to be able to get it dialed in the way I actually want it. But within a couple of days, I've got this set to where the home screen looks like this. It looks a bit more pleasing, and the actual movie experience is a lot better than what I was used to with the Apple TV. Skipping forward segments, chapter selection, all that kind of thing works. So for anybody out there debating whether or not to get this, I don't think this is a replacement for the Apple TV. Most people that are looking at purchasing an Apple TV today or whenever you're watching this, they're going to be after something that is an all-in-one, a streaming device, whereas this is for those who want a dedicated player, similar to Blu-ray players, something like that, where you're going to get the highest quality video and audio out of the actual device, and it will play back everything that you can throw at it. So for anybody looking for something like that, if you've got a home theater set up and you just want something to be able to take advantage of it, I highly recommend this.